Same 1993 ruling that was used to win the Hobby Lobby case is now being used by a group of high-level detainees at Guantanamo Bay, including Walid bin Attash and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who are being tried for helping to plan the September 11th attacks and have refused to meet with their counsel since the camp began using female guards, saying physical contact with the guards violates their religious rights. So, should Guantanamo Bay violate the equal opportunity employment rights in an effort to protect prisoners' religious rights? To discuss, we are joined by Larry Youngner, a partner at Tully Rinckey, Martha Rayner, a law professor at Fordham University, Huff Post justice reporter Ryan Riley, and Douglas Laycock, a law professor at the University of Virginia. Everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks.
Good morning.
So Ryan, give me the update. Talk to me specifically about what they're protesting. How many detainees are protesting currently?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's tough to figure out. I mean, with anything reporting on Guantanamo, exactly how many detainees, it's sort of secondhand from the lawyers, and it's very tough to actually get a number. But, you know, this is, I think, just another sort of delay that we've had in these proceedings here because of apparently a change in the guard force and how they were approaching, I guess, overseeing these detainees. It's caused them to say that, you know, this is going to be a violation of their religious beliefs, and that's not going to let them meet with lawyers. But, you know, the trial has already been so delayed at this point that this is just, you know, any delay that this might add to it is pretty much nothing. I mean, we're coming up on an entire year in January since we've really been able to focus on anything in the May 9/11 case because of this FBI investigation into some of the members of the defense team. So, I mean, overall, this process is so thrown off at this point that, you know, this isn't really going to end up being that much of a delay in the grand scheme of things, I think.
Is there a belief among those reporting on this that this protest is more in an effort to continue to delay the trial rather than to actually protest sincerely about their religious rights?
Well, I think it's both, right? I mean, certainly, I think this is a firmly held religious belief, but on the other hand, it's also going to, you know, delay the trial, which I think is ultimately the goal of the lawyers. A lot of the lawyers in this case, just to delay it is one of their central goals, because this entire process is sort of not really well vetted, and they're still sort of figuring things out as they go along. So, you know, I think that's delaying it is one of their major strategies.
Doug, what kind of message are they trying to send to officials at Guantanamo, the detainees? What kind of message are they trying to send?
Well, I don't know what they're thinking or what message they're trying to send, but obviously conservative Islam has very stringent views about contact between the sexes, and you know, we've apparently been willing to accommodate that for several years, and now we've changed our mind for whatever reason. So, you know, there is a legitimate religious interest here. It is protected by the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, but here, you know, accommodating the prison's practice to their religious beliefs requires discriminating against, you know, female soldiers or female employees of the United States government, and we're going to be very reluctant to do that. And the courts may well say there's a compelling government interest in not doing that. You know, in general, you know, prison guards are protected from sex discrimination. We have female guards in male prisons and vice versa. We have rules about nudity, about showers and toilets and strip searches, but you know, those are all based on American customs and culture, and so we don't have rules about incidental contact with all your clothes on, and that's what the issue is here.
You said these are based on American customs and culture, while at the same time Guantanamo is not on American soil. Some would say for the purpose of not having to abide by American customs and cultures when it comes to rules with prisoners. So how can these prisoners expect their religious rights to be followed and their rights under the Religious Freedom Act to be followed as well?
Well, Congress says in the statute everything the federal government does has to take account of the religious needs of the people the government's dealing with, and that the government can't burden a person's exercise of religion unless that's necessary to serve a compelling government interest. Now, the courts have been extremely deferential about everything having to do with Guantanamo, including things that seem much more important than this. You know, like whether you can be held without charges or not. So, you know, I would expect they're going to be deferential about this issue as well, assuming it ever gets to a court, and it may not.
Ryan, do we have any idea where the U.S. lands on this? What sort of responsibility they think they should be taking?
Well, funny enough, we do, because a few months back, I think in July, they had actually, the Hobby Lobby argument had essentially come up before. And let me see if I can pull up what the Justice Department said here is that basically their conclusion was that corporations, while under the Hobby Lobby decision, might be considered people, that Guantanamo detainees, even the human beings in Guantanamo, weren't considered persons under the law because they're non-resident aliens outside of the United States sovereign territory. So that's sort of their opinion on this, is that under even the Hobby Lobby and under this law on religious discrimination, that they aren't considered persons.
Martha, you've defended Guantanamo detainees. How does this offend their religious rights? One, and two, why is this suddenly happening now? It seems that we adhered to their religious rights just not so long ago.
Right. So I just want to speak for a moment to the issue of delay. I don't believe the men that are protesting and by not meeting with their lawyers or attending court proceedings, I don't think they're looking to delay. These men have been attending court and have been attending their lawyers' meetings, and it really truly was a change in policy at Guantanamo that triggered this so-called delay, right? Up until recently, women guards did not touch the detainees, did not serve as escorts when touching was required. So I just want to clarify that. Mm-hmm. Also, it is terribly troubling that in the past, courts have found that the men at Guantanamo are not persons under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Yet the Supreme Court held this year that closely held corporations are persons under the act. And that's sort of the intellectual distinction. Finding a corporation a person and not a human being at Guantanamo is particularly troubling. And I think it's worth adding that we need to recognize that women and men guards act differently in prison settings. That certainly women do not conduct strip searches of men and vice versa. And so there's just doesn't seem to be any sort of reason why we can't draw that line a little further and prohibit female guards from escorting men when it requires actual touching.
Larry, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues, you can look at here, I would just say, is that, there aren't any female detainees in Guantanamo. So it's not a traditional prison setting, or maybe where you could be able to transfer someone to another place where they would be able to, take care of female prisoners. There's just not that situation in Guantanamo available.
Larry, if we could easily enough accommodate this religious practice in a prison designed mostly for Muslims, why aren't we if we were doing it before? Larry, it seems like you're muted. We just have to get you unmuted. Just scroll up. We got him, Larry? It seems like you're still muted. I'm going to move that question to Martha. Can you answer that question for me?
Sure. I mean, I don't know why there was a change in policy. The policy had been that female guards did not touch the detainees. It seems a sudden change, and I don't understand the reason for it. I mean, in the past, when there have been controversies about the tension between religion and security, for example, there was a change in policy around groin searches. So for years, the JTF Gitmo, that is the commanding force, did not require there to be genital searches when the men came to visit their lawyers. There was a change in that policy, which caused tremendous problems because it was religiously offensive. In that context, the commanding authorities claimed that there were security reasons for having to change that policy. I don't agree with those reasons, but there were at least reasons that the government put forward. In this case, there is no security reasons why it is that women should be allowed to be escorts, right? And I think that it's really a false dichotomy to say this is religious freedom versus equal opportunities for women.
Why is that?
Because there are many women guards at Guantanamo, and they are performing very important work there. And there's plenty for them to do. So as I said, just as they're not permitted to monitor men in the showers, this is another routine piece of work that they're not allowed to do. But there's plenty for them to do there.
I want to pull up a quick comment from the community. I think some people are still kind of confused as to what it is exactly the men are protesting these women doing, and that's Jan Cummings says, but these men are fine with a female lawyer. Martha, you've been the lawyer before. They are fine with a female lawyer, right?
Yes, and I would like to add, I've represented my clients for many years. I have met with them many times, and they are always respectful to me. But I do not shake hands with my clients. That is not, they do not want that to happen. And so I don't shake hands with them. I don't touch them. But we sit across from a table from each other. We carry on rational, reasonable conversations as attorneys and clients do.
Ryan, some people are saying this wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the Hobby Lobby ruling. Is that true?
But I mean, I think they could have challenged it under this, but it certainly creates a contrast when you consider that, corporations are considered persons under the law, but the Justice Department says that these actual human beings aren't considered persons under the law because they consider them enemy belligerents. But, I would note on what we were talking about female lawyers, there had been an issue, I guess, actually, about this in the courtroom in the 9/11 case. And one of the lawyers for one of the detainees in that case actually wears a full abaya. And she actually had said that she had requested that some of the lawyers on the government side of the case, the female lawyers, dress more conservatively. And actually made that a point in court and asked for them to, I guess, cover up a little bit more, which is, so it's something that's been happening for a while, certainly, the issues over how exactly the detainees interact with both female guards and with lawyers. But there are a lot of, female, as noted, there are a lot of female leaders. I think last time I was there last year, the head of Camp 5 was a female guard. The officer in charge of that entire camp was female. So I think that they're in leadership roles there, and they certainly do perform alongside male guards.
Does it seem disingenuous to you, Larry, to say that it's a violation of equal opportunity women's rights to not allow them to be guards that escort the detainees? Oh, Doug? Can you hear me, Doug?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know that it's disingenuous, but it's sort of bureaucratic rigidity. It's, I know about religious liberty. I don't know much about Guantanamo. But if, as described, we got plenty of female guards there in leadership positions and doing all kinds of important work, then it's silly for the government to draw the line in the sand over this and disrupt these trials simply over escorting. And you can see the logic of it from an equal opportunity perspective, but the practical payoff for equal opportunity is essentially zero. It's all symbolic.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious, Martha. We expect and hope that other countries don't violate American prisoners' human rights while they're over there. But what about our religious rights? Has there ever been a situation where we've found an American prisoner of some kind has had their religious freedoms violated in another country?
Oh, I wouldn't know the answer to that. I mean, I suspect it happens, right? I think despite the fact that that's an ideal we all strive for, right? I'm sure there's many occasions where religious rights have been violated. And I don't have the knowledge to answer that question.
If this isn't an issue of security, then what's the solution, Martha?
I think the solution is extremely simple. I think that the authorities should go back to the practice that was in place until very recently and not have female guards provide escort duty when it will require touching the detainee. That's an extremely easy issue to accommodate, and there just doesn't seem to be a valid reason not to accommodate. Again, I agree with the other speaker who said it just seems like a silly reason to call this to talk about equal opportunity on such a small issue. It would be one thing if, unless a female guard participated in this routine duty, she wasn't eligible for promotion, for example, right? So it really was creating a barrier to her opportunities. But that's certainly not the case.
I want to pull up a statement. Guantanamo's PR unit issued the following statement in response to Guantanamo prisoners protesting female guards. Said, quote, "Women are a critical part of the United States all-volunteer military force serving around the globe. Joint Task Force Guantanamo is no different in offering equal opportunity for all service members serving here. Regardless of the camp in which they are assigned, women are a part of the Guard force whose responsibilities include escorting detainees. JTF Gitmo has no intention in modifying its assignment of job responsibilities to members of the Guard force based on gender." It seems to me to be a little bit here, Martha, that they are enforcing a sort of PR campaign about how they use women in the military and in these prisons without thinking about the ramifications for their prisoners.
Well, and it also raises a query whether there's some backstory here, right? Because you almost feel as though someone consciously decided to change this policy. They must have known what the consequences would be, and yet they went forward with it. And again, you just really have to understand what principle is really involved here. I don't disagree with JTF Gitmo's statement, right? But again, that's not what's happening here. That's not really what this is about.
Larry, we have you now. I want to pull up a question for you. What kind of message do you think they're trying to send U.S. officials at Guantanamo, the prisoners?
And is this for Larry? I'm sorry, I was just handed the phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Larry. This one's for you.
All right, great. Sorry about the difficulties here. You said what kind of message the prisoners are trying to send. Interestingly, it's probably the same message we would want our citizens or soldiers to send if they were detained, and that is that religious rights should be respected. And an interesting argument to make, the legal grounds that they have, that our citizens would have if they were POWs, is that international humanitarian law, or the law of armed conflict, guarantees, going back to 1899 in the first Hague regulations forward through the additional protocols from 1977, religious liberties are protected. They're not protected as a blank check. There are conditions, and those conditions require you to comply with reasonable disciplinary routines and rules that are prescribed that apply. The argument I would make in this instance is that look, we have a manual on detainee operations. It requires a balance to be struck between the detainee's obligations to follow disciplinary rules and the detaining authority, the U.S. in this instance, obligation to afford our detainees religious opportunity. So why not strike that balance? And the argument that's already been made by several other speakers is we've done this in the past. Why can't we do it now? And that's a great question, and it would seem like we should be able to reasonably accommodate, unless there is some valid protection or security concern. And so to me, there is a great argument to be made to apply our own international humanitarian law or customary international law to this fact pattern.
If I can interject, this is a very common pattern in religious liberty cases, that the religious practice has been dealt with, both sides have been happy, the government's accomplished its purpose, the religious folks have been able to practice their religion, and then there's a change in personnel. Some new decision maker comes along and says, I'm not going to do it anymore. And I don't know who the new decision maker was here, but doesn't sound like it was because of any problem in the older practice. Somebody just changed the government's mind.
What? I'm sorry, that sounds, Ryan, go ahead. That sounds crazy to me that someone in the military would just show up and almost change law like that. I could see the CEO of a Viacom or something changing what they want to do with other executives and how they want to maneuver the channels, but I can't imagine someone in the military showing up and saying, we're just going to violate their religious freedoms now. I don't want to do this anymore. Ryan, go ahead.
Well, I mean, this happens all the time with Guantanamo. And I mean,
well,
in terms
Larry,
of detainees.
As a former military member, I will tell you, every new commander comes into a situation, has to assess it and give their best military judgment. I would ask the commander in this instance to articulate how they have struck a balance and show their good faith balance. It may be that on that particular shift, they just had to have a female do the escort. On the other hand, it may be there was no good reason. So I would give them the benefit of the doubt to at least explain their rationale. Absent such an explanation, then it would seem to me that a balance could be struck where you would minimize the need to have female guards escorting Islamic detainees. I would have a real problem if only female guards were put into that particular facility so that these detainees were always escorted by females. That would be a problem.
Ryan, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is a problem that we've seen all the time with Guantanamo. I think that, you have new leadership come in, they look at the situation. They haven't, they've had vast military experience, but typically they haven't had an experience like this before. It's a very unique situation that there's not a lot of, comparable, there's not a lot of things to compare it to. Maybe they've had experience at a military detention facility overseas, but there's nothing quite like Guantanamo. So they come in, they look around, they decide, I don't like how things are over here, I'm going to change this, and it upsets the detainees. I mean, this is something that we have on a regular basis that you wouldn't have in a federal prison if that's where the detainees were being held, or on American soil, when people were actually, the people who were in charge of the camp probably lived around there and weren't on a deployment for a specific amount of time, because that's what happens. You have a change in guard force, and they come down and they say, oh, we're going to do things this way, and then it's like that for however many months or a year, and then a new guard force comes in, and now we're going to change the way we're doing things, and they have to learn all over. Yeah.
Ryan, we're not talking about a menu change. We're not talking about a different lunch bell. We're talking about violating the Religious Freedom Act, something that they have been upholding for a very long time. It seems that to just sort of glibly throw that away.
No. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that this is something that that does happen, not only in this context. This is obviously a very serious change that is upsetting the detainees, but it also happens in other contexts. It's not, it's not just. So what happened is probably a commander came in and said, I think, hey, why are we not letting female detainees escort these people as well? And just decided to make that change. It's not like it was a higher up decision. It's just whoever was in charge of the camp at that time, sort of sets the rules, and that's how it basically goes.
Well, we got to wrap it up here, but we'll definitely be following this conversation in the coming weeks. Larry, Martha, Ryan, Doug, thanks so much for joining me. Larry, sorry for the problems with your phone at the beginning. I'm glad we got you in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And stick around. The conversation at HuffPost Live always continues.